Well, I thought I'd share this exciting day with you. I am currently potting on the peppers, and these are the ones that I sowed in sort of late December time. They were slow to germinate because I don't have a propagator, so all of my heat-loving plants take 3 or 4 days longer, maybe a bit longer than that, maybe 5 or 6 days longer than most people's. But they grow on nicely, so I'm not really that bothered. I'm not very motivated to get a propagator. I'm quite pleased with the plants. They're looking really strong, nice and stocky. I was looking for plants that, they've got a lot of strength to the stems and they're nice and short, because obviously I don't want them to grow too big and floppy and all that sort of thing. Partly because I grow mine in low tunnels and I also grow them along this bench in here. I don't have a lot of space in a low tunnel for them, probably about this sort of height, so I don't want them to grow too tall. And I've grown them in these container-wise root trainers. I like these, but they are a bit close together. There's 15 plugs in this tray, cells in this tray, and I'm putting them into these 11cm pots, which are 6 cells to a tray. So I've left the 6 in here just for you to see. So basically, those 6 there are going to take up that whole tray once they're potted on. So it's not so much about giving them more compost, it's about giving them more space to grow, more light, and a little bit more of a water reservoir so that they can be watered a little bit less frequently. And infrequent watering is quite good for peppers. They like it moist, but not wet. So the longer you can kind of have between waterings, or the more frequent you water them, but have to water them a tiny amount, I think it's just better to sort of give them a bit of a soak, then leave them for a week. So that probably for about 4 days at least, they're sort of in nice moist compost, then give them a bit more of a soak, and then, for 2 or 3 days they're a little bit wet, but then the next sort of 4 or 5 days, again, they're sort of in nice moist compost. They seem to like it like that. And I like it like that because it's less work for me. So I'll show you how I just pop them out. I just brought you a bit closer in. So yeah, it's a bit tricky holding this tray at the same time. Pop them out like that with your thumb or your finger, and you can just pull them out now. So you can see that I've got these also sort of, moist, but not soaking wet. They're not at all root bound. In fact, I think they're in really nice condition. You can see that the container-wise kind of root trainers have done their job. They've directed root growth down, so there's no matted roots really, not too bad anyway. And all the roots are sort of hanging down here, and then they get air pruned at the bottom there. And air pruning just means that when they come into contact with oxygen, the roots sort of stop growing at that point, and the plant sends more roots down. So you get nice, well-developed root systems. I'm just taking these seed leaves off, and I'm not sure whether that's a good idea or not, but I always do it, and you can judge by results, not theory. And just put enough compost in so that the plants are about the level that they were in the original pots. Now, I like to have my pots twisted 45 degrees from square to leave these gaps in the corners, which makes it really easy then just to sort of filter in a little bit of compost into the gaps in the corners. And then once you've done that, obviously just gently fern them in. You don't want to fern them in too tightly. You don't want to do any root damage. But, you don't need to be that gentle. And, yeah, I don't fuss overly much about making sure that the plants are at exactly the level they were previously. I've had good success really with burying the stems in the past. Never lost a single pepper, so they always grow on quite nice and strong. And that is kind of what I'm looking for there. So that is a lovely, nice, stocky little plant. Yeah, so I'll tell you how I look after them from this point onwards in a minute. I'll maybe just do one more of these just to show you. So I'll go through the varieties as well. So we've got here Akron, which is a lovely dark red pepper, sweet pepper. All of these are sweet peppers, by the way. And I've got long yellow ringo, which is also known by another name, which I can never remember because it's Italian. But I'll put it up on the screen. And somewhere around there, I've got Bright Star down there. So that's an orange one. So I've got a yellow one, a red one, and an orange one. And I've got 15. I'm only going to put maximum of 6 plants in the greenhouse. So I've got quite a few spares that'll probably end up going into one of my low tunnels or just being given away, because I really like, for the ones that I put in the low tunnels, I like to start them much later. In fact, they've just germinated just now. This is the sort of timing I like. I like to be potting these on basically at the time that I'm ready to prick out my next succession. Just seems like nice and neat and tidy to me to do it like that. And I've got a video which I'll link in the description of me doing all the pricking out and all that. But yeah, I like to start them later because I'm not going to be planting those out into the low tunnels until, well into May. It depends a bit on the long range forecast. I do like to get plants into the ground as quickly as possible, but I really need to see a long range forecast that shows nighttime temperatures in the sort of 10, 11 mark. Now at that temperature, they're not going to set fruit. They really need it to be 15 degrees centigrade to set fruit. But I don't want newly planted peppers to set fruit. I've already got the ones in the greenhouse which will have set fruit. So I'm not, I won't be short of peppers for eating fresh. So I'm quite happy for them to sort of establish themselves as nice stocky plants, grow on, get a good amount of leaf on, and then set fruit sometime in June. And that gives them plenty of time to get often 2 sort of flushes. I mean, they do continuously flower, but it feels to me like there's a bit of a 2 flush system sort of going on. So you get a big sort of flush initially, which you kind of harvest in September, or late August, sort of September time. And then you get another flush of growth, and if you're lucky, you'll get those to ripen in October before you sort of take the plants out. So that's the way I like to do it. And as a result, there's no point starting them too early because you end up with great big massive leggy plants that are a real mess, rather than nice small compact plants which grow on so fast in the right growing conditions. A lot about planting is getting the timings right and having space to put your pots. A lot about it is getting your timings right, because if you don't, that one didn't come out very nicely. So where was I? If you start them too late, then you don't get that second flush of fruits. So you still might, you might in sort of late September or mid-September, you might still get your first flush, but then there just isn't enough time for them to set another batch of fruits that you're going to harvest in October. And that's a shame, because you're getting like half the yield, really. So, yeah, I think about now is the time to be pricking out my main crops. I'm happy with that timing. And I'll just show you the plants, actually, the sort of size that I like to plant them out in the open ground underneath my low tunnels. And obviously I'm in the northwest of England here, so you know, they need some protection from the elements. And low tunnels are perfect. I much prefer low tunnels to the greenhouse here, or the polytunnel on the allotment, which I think are just way too hot. They're really great in June. Well, they're really great in, I put these in here in sort of mid to late April. So they're really good at that time of year, provided you're heating your greenhouse like I am. It's frost-free at the moment, so I've not got any tender crops in here. I don't have any peppers or tomatoes or anything like that in here at the moment. But in April, when I put the peppers in, I start to heat it, and I like to heat it sort of to 10, 11 degrees centigrade, something like that, which is fairly warm. But I have a lot of crops in here, a lot of cucumbers and tomatoes and things like that. So yeah, there's no issue. You know, the cost of heating is easily covered by the value of the crops that I'm harvesting. And I forgot to take off one of the seed leaves. There we go. I'm completely lost. What I was saying, it's too complicated doing two jobs at the same time. Yeah, so they need protection, but they don't need too much heat. So, you know, that is the issue in the greenhouse. You often get sort of above 40 degrees centigrade in here, just too warm for peppers. So it's great in April when I start heating. It's great in May. It's great in June in here. By July, it's getting a bit warm, so the peppers in here will be moved outside. The peppers in the low tunnels, I'll start to open the low tunnels on hinges, start opening them up a bit, or quite a lot actually, and that obviously gives them some more height to grow into. They're protected because of the orientation of my low tunnels from the prevailing wind, which is northwest, so they're not getting much wind on them. The wind's hitting the back of the low tunnels, but they're getting the sun from the south, obviously through the open part of the low tunnel, but they're getting loads of ventilation, and yeah, they really love it in there. That combination of protection from the wind, plenty of warmth, not too much warmth, lots of ventilation, seems to be really great for peppers. Right, so let me just quickly interrupt myself for a minute, because there's a lot going on with gardening and it's often difficult to know what to do when. And so I've got a few things to help you with that. The first thing is I've got my weekly newsletter. So you can subscribe to that at steverichards.substack.com. There's a link to that down in the description below. And that is basically like my weekly gardening diary, plus. So yeah, there's a lot in there about what I'm sowing, what I'm pricking out, what I'm planting, what I'm harvesting, all that sort of thing for each week of the year, because we do sort of grow year round here. But there's also loads of sort of reference information that I'm sort of pointing out to you, things, information from my databases, links to growing guides and things like that, previews of what I'm going to be doing next month, and just sort of general background on, you know, what sort of pests we're experiencing at the moment and diseases and things like that and what we can do about it, as well as what's going wrong, because it's nice to talk about what goes wrong each week. I think people learn a lot from mistakes and from just general, like, there's a lot of variables in gardening. So if you're interested in that, do take a look at that down below. And there's loads of other links down below to my ebook and other resources. So if you're interested in any of that, just take a look in the description below. Let's get back to the video. All right then, there we go. That's all done. So we've got the Akron there. I've only got 3 of those. I've got lots of them for my main crops. I've got the long yellow ringo there, and I've got the bright star there. And yeah, let's just talk about watering. So this compost straight out the bag is moist, and so they don't need watering. They're already reasonably well watered in the modules, some of them slightly too well watered. So I definitely don't want to give them any more water. I want them to get established into this moist compost here, and I give them maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, and then give them a light water and just continue from there. Definitely don't want to saturate them. Peppers hate being saturated, and newly established plants, again, they just don't want all that water on the roots. So yeah, that's it for the peppers.